everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps, and this is Lunchtime Live, episode 92. For those of you who are new here, Lunchtime Live is basically my video newsletter. So I'll tell you everything that's going on at Stitches and Scraps, what I'm working on, all of that. And then we finish each session with a stitch of the week. Or with a quick demo. This year I'm doing a stitch of the week, and I'm alternating between knit and crochet stitches. So this is a knit week, and we're doing the knit rosette stitch, which I don't have a sample to show you right here, but we will work up a sample. Hi Beth, hi Mary, good to see you girls. Girls, ladies, that just came out. I started to say guys, and then I was like, you're not guys, and then girls came out. So anyway, hi. Okay, so the stitch of the week is rosette stitch, and the one thing I want to tell everybody who's new is if you're trying to find any of the things I'm talking about, like when I talk about patterns or tutorials or stuff like that, they're all listed in the blog post that goes along with this video. So if you look in the description on this video, you'll see a link. Go to that link and you'll see a list of everything I plan to talk about with all the links and everything so that you can get to anything that I mention. You'll take girls. All right, Mary. Girls it is. Okay, so what's new at Stitches and Scraps? Well, I've got a bunch of stuff to show you that you've already seen, unfortunately, because I'm still working on stuff. So this basket, I have made no progress on it at all since the last time I showed it to you. I'm thinking I'm going to take off a row on the top before I finalize it, because this just feels, when I fold it down, it feels a little bit too much. Like here, I'm rolling it down, and it just feels a little bit too much. So I'm going to take off a row, maybe two, see how that does, and then I'll write this up. But I'm hoping to have this pattern up for you guys tomorrow. And then what else? This week, not tomorrow, next week. I hope to have it up for you next week. I'm not going to finish it tomorrow. This week, what I've got is the tutorial, the first tutorial for this bag, which is bag 3 in the bag along cal. And the first tutorial is how to make this mandala here, the layered flower mandala. And it's a lot of fun to make, because like you start on this layer and then you go to this layer and then you go back to this layer and then you combine them all. And it's like they weave in and out of each other. So it's 2 layers all the way from here to here. You're working 2 separate layers separately, and then up here you combine them. So it's a lot of fun to make. And I've got a full tutorial step by step all the way through the pattern now. It's up on the blog. And the next tutorial for that one will come out in 2 weeks, and that one will be for the lining. So those are the 2 tutorials for that bag. Also, of course, as always, make sure you go to the Bag Along Cal post and enter the giveaway, because there's a giveaway for each bag. You don't have to make the bag in order to enter. I know some of you don't have time to make all the bags, but you can still enter the giveaway. It's sponsored by We Crochet, and they provided all the yarn for the bags. Maybe next week I'll pull out the prize for this one again and show it to you. So that's what I'm working on. I'm also working on a top for conference that I sort of started at a guild meeting like 2 months ago and haven't got much farther than that, but I'm hoping to have that ready in time for the conferences I'm going to in June. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe it won't be ready for the June one, but I'll have it ready for July. It'll be ready eventually. And once I've got it, I'll write the pattern for you. Let's see, what else? Next week, the stitch of the week is going to be diagonal box stitch in crochet. And for those of you who don't know, diagonal box stitch is the proper, correct, real name for the stitch everybody calls C2C. Diagonal box stitch is a corner to corner stitch. It's the most popular corner to corner stitch, but it is not the only corner to corner stitch. So I prefer to actually call it diagonal box stitch, because there are other stitches that can be worked from corner to corner. So diagonal box stitch is going to be our stitch of the week next week. And I know that's a really popular one, so hopefully you'll all be able to come for that. And that's Oh, I'm working on a softie for an upcoming softie cal. Without giving too much away, what I'm attempting to do is take two separate softies and make it so that you can fold one into each, they fold into each other, so you can turn it from one thing into another thing. And I don't want to say what it is, but it's really cute. So I'm hoping to have that done. I'm hoping it works. If it doesn't work, I'll just make the one thing. But I'm hoping it works. And then if it does, that will be out in, I want to say like 3 weeks for the softie cal. So that's what I'm working on. If there's no questions on that, I'm just going to jump right into the rosette stitch. I love this stitch texture. And I don't have a swatch because what I used for the pictures was just from a pattern that I've done before, which is the rosette stitch scrunchie, which is basically a rectangle of rosette stitch made into a scrunchie. And I have a tutorial that went along with that too. So if you want to see like real in-depth tutorial of rosette stitch, you can check that out. That's one of the links in the blog post, but we'll just go over it kind of on the surface here, because it's really a much easier stitch than it looks like. It's one of those that looks super impressive, but it's really not that hard. So you can work this over any number of stitches. And here I have like 12 stitches. It doesn't even matter odd or even, because either way you're going to have an extra knit stitch on one end or the other. So let me show you how to do it. We're going to start with a knit stitch. Let's start our first row with a knit stitch. Having this one extra knit stitch helps you to stagger your rosettes, and that's why we will start with it here and then we won't start with it next time, and that'll stagger the rosettes. So that's the one. Now let's do the actual rosette stitch. Rosette stitch is sorry, I was doing it wrong. You purl 2 together first. So you bring your yarn to the front, you purl 2 together. It's not cooperating with me. There we go. Purl 2 together. But now we're not going to take this off of our needle. Okay, do you see that? I made that purl 2 together stitch, but I'm leaving these 2 stitches on the needle. Because if I took these off, that would be a decrease, right? We don't want a decrease. We want our stitch counts to remain even. So we do the 1 decrease, and then we're going to come back, put our yarn at the back again, and now do a knit 2 together into those same 2 stitches. So now we've had 2 stitches. We decrease them, but we decrease them twice. So we end up with 2 new stitches, and our stitch count stays the same. So now we can throw those 2 off the needle, and that is your first little rosette right there. You see that? Okay, so now we're going to keep doing that all the way across. So bring the yarn to the front, purl 2 stitches together. My stitches are a little tight here, so sorry if I'm struggling a bit. Purl 2 stitches together, and then don't throw that off. You're going to be tempted to throw that off. Don't throw it off. Bring your yarn to the back and knit those same 2 stitches, just like that. One more time. Purl 2 stitches, and then bring the yarn to the back and knit 2 stitches. Okay, purl 2 stitches. Man, I made this really tight. I must have been stressed when I started this. There you go. Purl 2 stitches, bring the yarn to the back, and knit the same 2 stitches. Okay, purl 2 together. Last one here. Purl 2 together. Leave those stitches on the needle. Bring the yarn to the back. Knit those same 2 stitches together. Now, because I had an even number of stitches, and here you can see the little rosettes, how they make these little clusters, right? Now here I had an even number of stitches, and because I had that first knit stitch, now I've got an extra stitch left over at the end. Whenever you have an extra stitch at the end, you're just going to knit it, okay? If I had an odd number of stitches, I wouldn't have that extra stitch at the end, and that's fine too. So this works over any number of stitches. Now on the next row, we're just going to knit to get back to where we were. And you could probably do this with purl too if you wanted to, like if you didn't want the garter stitch look and you wanted more of the stockinette stitch look, or if you wanted this to be the right side, or sorry, the wrong side and this to be the right side, or however, however you want to do it, you could change it up. This stitch works really well in reverse, but I'm doing the knits. Okay. So this side that I'm looking at here, this is actually going to be my right side. So it'll look like stockinette on this side and then reverse stockinette on the other side. So I'm knitting all the way across, and now you can see what one row of, or well, 2 rows really, of rosette stitch looks like. There's my little rosettes. You see them? Okay, so now we're going to stagger. Now we're going to do another row and we're going to stagger them. The last time that we did the wrong side row, we started with a knit stitch. So this time, to stagger it, to offset it by 1 stitch, we're going to not start with a knit stitch. We're just going to go right into starting with our rosettes. So right from the beginning, we're going to do a purl 2 together, bring the yarn to the front, and knit 2 together. Okay, purl 2 together, bring the yarn to the front, knit 2 together. And we keep doing this all the way down the row. Now, again, I've got an even number here and I'm doing these stitches in pairs. So I'm going to have an even number all the way across. I'm going to be able to do rosette stitches all the way across. If I had an odd number, I would have 1 stitch left over at the end. And whenever you have 1 stitch left over at the end, all you're going to do is knit that stitch. So either way works. It doesn't matter what your stitch count is. I love stitches where it doesn't matter what the stitch count is. Oh my God, they're so much easier to design with. Okay, so there we go. Purl these 2 together, bring the yarn to the front, knit these 2 together, and now I've got a full second row of rosettes that are staggered on the other ones. I'm going to do the plain knit row just so that we can get some space here, and then I'll show you what it looks like and you can identify your little rosettes. So this row is just knit. So it's a 4-row repeat if you want it staggered. If you want them all lined up in columns, then you can do it as a 2-row repeat, because then you would do that extra knit stitch at the beginning to every time, or leave it out every time, whichever way you preferred. But if you want them staggered, it becomes a 4-row repeat. Okay. Man, I'm just fumbling everywhere today. All right, here we go. So looking really closely at this, you can see here is a rosette. See the little decreases there? There's a rosette from the first row that we did. And then here is the rosette from the other row. And you can see that this is centered between these 2 because we staggered it by 1 stitch. And that's how you do the rosette stitch. So variations, you could do them all in columns and not stagger them. You could do kind of a garter stitch sort of approach where you purled in between instead of knit in between if you like the other side of it. And that's about it. That is the rosette stitch. So really useful textured stitch for washcloths or stuff like that. Anything where you want like a little bit of texture but not big holes. You know what I mean? And that's it. That's the rosette stitch. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I will just say have a great weekend and I'll see you guys next week. Oh, wait a minute, because I know that there's a delay. Okay, all good? All right. Bye. Have a good weekend.